Now, one of the things you have to have on your land, really, you know, a telltale sign that you have a good quality hunting program, design, habitat design on your properties, you have to have morning stands. And I'm not talking about you have one morning stand on 40 acres. If you're doing it right, you're going to have multiple morning stands, and as the property gets larger, you have more and more. Morning stands are really critical. I spend about 20% of my time hunting in the morning, maybe 15% of the time, yet they account for 60, 70, 80% of the bucks depending on the season. And a very small percentage of the sits, but they account for a high percentage of the harvest, because mature bucks will move more in the morning hours than they do in the afternoon hours. They're free to move all morning long. They're not used to a lot of hunting pressure, but a lot of people don't have it dialed in enough so that they can say this is a morning stand or an evening stand. We're going to talk about that to help you do so. You have to have it. If you tell me here's my 40-acre parcel and you don't have any morning stands, it's all afternoon, then there's something wrong with the design and with the parcel. And typically you can tell some things that are wrong right off the bat. But if you have morning stands and they're high quality, it's a sign of a great deer parcel design. And if you don't, again, there's a problem.
I didn't proof this till you started. Add a Y after strategy.
Okay. Thanks, Dylan.
Sorry.
Dylan's using my proofreader. I need one. I need an editor for all this stuff.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. Quality food is what dictates where morning stands are. And what I mean by that is you will have food here. There's opportunity for doe and fawn bedding here, immature bucks, and finally mature bucks. Depending on where you're at, this can stretch anywhere from 150 yards to a half mile. Big wooded wilderness parcels with not a lot of deer, that space will be greater. Where you have limited amounts of cover in northern Ohio. I was at an area in, well, it's west and south of Rochester, Minnesota. It got into areas that reminded me of southern Michigan, where it was flat. And I can guarantee when I was driving down some of those roads, you could look over to the side and not see woods for 2 miles in some directions. So very small wood lots. When you have that kind of habitat, then deer are compartmentalized and they're forced into very small areas. That's a little bit different. So their daylight movements could be very small, even though they might be going a mile to an ag field across the dark, you know, across the fields. That's not reflective of what their daylight movements are. Quality food defines this entire layered bedding that I've been teaching and recognized decades ago. It's very, very critical. Food starts it all. If you don't have an afternoon food source the deer are going to, this food, and typically it's not directly a linear, there could be bedding over here, bedding down here. And what happens is these further bedding areas, they're the ones that actually hold the bucks, mature bucks. It's those areas in between. So what happens in most locations, and that's why food is so critical too, because if you spook out the food source, all these bedding areas are gone. They're not going to be in those bedding areas. You could spook out a random bedding area over here, the mature buck might shift over here if he wants to hit that afternoon food source every day, and he recognizes the food as being unpressured. That's why it's so critical you don't spook out that food. You can get away with going in and hunting a morning stand, bumping out a buck in the bedding area in the morning. You don't want to do that, make a habit of it. But if you do that, I'd rather do that than spook out that food source right there. The problem is that most parcels don't have enough space, and hunters have poorly designed their parcels. So if you have a large food source here and you have a 1/4 mile to work with, you know, it's a 40-acre parcel. Well, then they have another food source down here. They access with an ATV through here to a blind. This neighbor has some pressure on this border, consistent access back and forth. And all of a sudden, you get to a point where you start adding it up, and let's say you have a deer blind right here that you're pretty active on, a hunting plot where you spook deer off of. All of a sudden, you start Xing out areas of the property where no mature bucks can live, and you're left with no area a buck can live, no area a buck wants to live, and you can't attract a mature buck. I've seen people do that on 500 acres easily, because this is where they access with an ATV, this is where they drop people off, this is where they go against with traffic and hunting pressure, this is where they drive through to a neighboring parcel. You start Xing out all those areas, and then you add in some neighboring hunting pressure where it's pretty invasive, and you start Xing it out, and all of a sudden you're left with 40 acres out of 400 that could possibly even hold a mature buck instead of 300 acres if they're doing it well. If they're doing it well, then you have depth. And what I mean by that is you have enough room for that layered approach. You have food here, and you have all this depth in here where you can layer does, fawns, and then you all of a sudden have a buck bedding area here, and you have that depth to do so. That's how you start to develop morning stands. One of the best ways to ruin a morning stand, go add food by it. Because now you just took that area, especially if it's a quarter acre and it's an appreciable food source, and does and fawns hit it, young bucks. Now you just took an opportunity for now does and fawns to bed in here, does and fawns are bedding here, and you just blocked out a whole buck bedding area because you put food in the wrong location. I've seen 400 acres before where they had 25 acres in food. They probably had 20 different food plots, and you couldn't go 100 yards in that 400 acres without hitting another food plot. Literally, the mature bucks would grow old enough, and because they had beans, because they pushed it, they had 100 does and fawns living on there. But that was another problem. But the deer would actually grow a mature buck out of his level of reclusiveness that he requires and move on to another property a mile away or 2 miles away and get shot as a 5-year-old 180-inch over there. They literally would grow out. They pass them as a 2-year-old, pass them as a 3-year-old. All of a sudden at 3 or 4, they're disappearing forever. They think it's poaching. They think they just died. All of a sudden they're getting shot a mile and a half away. They grew out of the property because there's too much food, not enough depth. Once you have that depth and you've established that, this is a bedding area, this is a bedding area, you have all this stuff in between, food right here. Now you're coming in over here with the right wind and you're sitting here. You might even pass this, come around, and you're hunting over here. Maybe you come and you hunt this side right here. You're not coming through the food to get to a location, but the bottom line is now you have morning bedding area, mature buck stands where you can get to, and you're not using those the entire season. You're using it during the pre-rut, peak rut, post-rut. That's why it's so critical that you understand when the pre-rut actually takes place every year, what those dates are, the peak rut, rut lockdown. You understand that entire 3-week window of opportunity, because if you wait a week and a half because you think it's not started, you just missed opportunity to go into a really nice bedding area and sit on the outside of it, and you have that depth that's established by the quality food, and you go in a different direction, non-food access. If you go through the food source in the morning, the deer are there, you just blew out the bedding areas too. No different than if you overpressure that food source and you sit on top of a 3-acre food plot with a bow in the corner, you put a licking branch out, you put a mock rub, mock scrape, and you think, well, these deer are going to come right here in front of me. Well, when you get out, you spook all the deer, you just ruin the food source. You can't do that. We have 3¼ acre food plots in Wisconsin where we hunt out of the 40 acres that's there. We don't hunt it with a bow, because if we do, we spook the deer. It's a big arena. We walk in there, we spook the deer. So the deer come to that food source every single day, and they don't get spooked unless we shoot them during gun season. And for that, we get to hunt the entire property. There's a lot of depth, and we get to hunt our target bucks and have success every single year because we're not spooking out the food. We hunt the property lightly, and the deer fall in line just like this. We have a big bowl, all the does and fawns bed there. We're coming in around that. We're hunting in the buck bedding areas or on the edge of buck bedding areas because we have that depth. Non-food access, we go in the morning, and then a lot of times we'll go back through the food at 11 o'clock or noon if we want to get out, because there's no deer on the food in the middle of the day. They're on there the last 45 minutes, they're there at daybreak, at nightfall. Then we're going in one way, coming out the other. So your non-food access could change when you're walking out during daylight hours or even walking in the afternoon. Edge of bedding is where you're hunting, not in the bedding. You're hunting on the edge, you're hunting safely so you can hunt another day. You're not blowing your scent into the bedding area, you're not getting into the bedding area and leaving your scent, getting in and out. You're not going all in for broke. You're hunting on the outside. We hunt a lot of water holes in that situation. We always have mock scrapes at our stands. We hunt funnels to and from, thick brushy funnels going into that bedding area on the edge. So you might get deer moving on the outside of the bedding area, which we see a lot of, or they're going in and out and you're hunting on the downwind edge of all of that movement. And it becomes a money, highly defined stand location because you're not hunting the food. You're not hunting the doe bedding, you're not hunting the immature buck bedding in between, you're hunting the mature buck bedding, which is a sacred spot. They're fairly defined, they're fairly easy to find. They're anywhere from 200 to 400 yards away from the major food source. So if you add another one at yardage 400, you might not have any room left over because you have a big food source here, you have a big food source here, and you don't have enough depth in between to hold mature bucks. That's a problem we see all the time with too much food on a property. You hunt the edge of the bedding, you get this all together, and really cool because you go in there in the morning to hunt, and if a buck during the rut is using that bedding area, he's probably a mile away, half mile away, quarter mile at daybreak, and you can get in. Then you have the luxury of sitting there for 4 or 5 hours or 3 hours and knowing if there's any deer around. You can see that there's no deer around. You can see when they've bedded, you can see when they move through. A lot easier to get out of your stand then safely and get the heck out of there than if you're going in the afternoon to that same stand location because you don't know what's bedded where and you have a likelihood you could spook something. You don't know what's coming through, when they're coming through. You get out in the morning. There's no set time to get out. When do you get out of a bedding area stand in the morning? 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, no set time. You get out when there's no deer. You can get out, you know what's there. They've been sitting there for hours. The squirrels will tell you what's where. You can see deer coming in and out. And so the bottom line is you have to have these morning stands if you're going to have a good deer parcel design. And when I say you have morning stands, let's say on a 40-acre parcel you have 8 to 11, 12 stands. Would you say would be typical you see on 40? I'm seeing 7, 8 at the least, and then 11, 12 tops out. Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I tend to go offer more of the options. I'm an options guy. So
yeah, me too.
Typically I'll be like, hey, we're going to mark 12.
Yeah.
But, maybe start with your favorite 6 to 8.
Yeah.
And then
yeah, exactly.
Hey,
I'll even help them pick the 6 to 8.
Yep,
like you got to have these.
Yep, for sure.
And I would say if you had 8, when you agreed, Dylan, you'd probably have a couple high-end morning stands.
Yeah.
You'd have a couple afternoon, evening, and then you'd have a blend of in between.
Crossovers, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in between. You might even have more afternoon stands, but you're definitely going to have 20% morning stands on a property, 25% somewhere around there. You're going to have more afternoon, you're going to have a few in the middle. But bottom line is, morning stands are not only a great sign of a really high quality habitat design and hunting design. I could even transfer that to public land. You better know where you can sit in the morning, not just the afternoon, evening on a good oak flat. Where are they at in the morning? It's the same type of thing. You're looking for that depth. You're coming in the non-food access. Same thing on public land. But it's not just a sign of great hunting design. It's also a sign that you're going to be successful this fall, and that's what we want for you to be successful. And you better have some morning stands on your land or within your hunt on public land if you hope to find the ultimate level of success this fall. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. You're our best followers. You followed all the way to the end of the video. Really invite you to check out our website. We have our Earthway spreaders for sale. Great Christmas presents. We're booking clients right now, all 5 of us. So by the end of December, it seems early, but by the end of December, our schedule will be booked for 2025. It's hard to believe. I'm already booked for December and most of January, February. We have our web classes, the rut web class, how to design your whitetail property, and really important, hunting hills and thermals, understanding the wind. Those are great products on our site, all the books. Thank you so much for watching all the videos, buying the seed that you did this year. Really appreciate you.